Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we're going to talk about Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. This is going to be a spoiler-free Season 1 discussion. We're going to keep this pretty brisk, kind of a short video just to give people an idea of what to expect from the season as a whole. You know, if you're wondering if you dive into it, is it worth watching the whole thing? Now that we've finished the season, we've put up spoiler reviews of all the 8 episodes. There'll be a link to the playlist in the corner. You can check that out to get really in-depth spoiler thoughts on each episode. But this is just a sense of how we felt about the whole thing. So, Connor, how did you feel about season 1 of A Series of Unfortunate Events?
I'd say overall, it was pretty enjoyable. Much more so than I expected going in.
I think that's the big thing for us, is how surprised we were by how... Not that we were expecting it to be bad, we were kind of optimistic about it, but we didn't expect to like it as much as we did.
Yeah, I think we always thought it looks good. There's talent attached. It's promising, but we watched it and was like, oh, this is really enjoyable. Like much more than we expected, really.
Yeah, I think it's because it's kind of coming from a sensibility that's different from what we typically watch. It's very different to a lot of the other shows that we've reviewed on the channel. It's a little bit more whimsical, a little more fantasy-esque,
Yeah,
but it's got a really sharp humour to it.
yeah,
Sharp wit. Neil Patrick Harris, I would say, is the standout, of course. He plays Count Olaf.
of
And
course.
his attitude with the other characters, his delivery of lines where he puts down other people, and just the general shenanigans. Shenanigans is a very good word to describe what Count Olaf gets up to.
It is. It's very cartoony in that sense.
Yeah, very very cartoony, but never off-putting, so I don't think.
No, and I think that comes from, like I say, the humor. It's very clever in that it has these broad, appealing shenanigans that are just ridiculous visual gags. There's a lot of very smart wordplay.
A lot of smart wordplay, language and communication is a big theme of the show. They're constantly talking about words and their meanings. It's brought up quite a bit throughout the series. There's also a lot of good running jokes that are set up, and some stuff is a running joke that will just be for the episode. There's other running jokes that are set up in episode 1 and keep going until the final episode. Hell, some will be set up episode 2 and then won't come back up again till, say, episode 6. That kind
But
of thing.
most of them have payoff.
Yeah, there's payoff, maybe you weren't expecting payoff, and I think that's really impressive. And the other stuff that I think impressed us is maybe not right at the start of the show, but later on in the show, we kind of realised that we actually do kind of care about these characters, and there was a couple of moments in particular where it got emotional, and we felt the emotion. It wasn't just... You know, a lot of shows, especially stuff that's aimed or suitable for kids, like this would be, when it gets to the part that, oh, this is emotional, well, it's the emotional part because the story says it's the emotional part, but it doesn't actually hit home. Whereas here, there's actually some times where I was like, oh, I'm actually really
Yeah,
invested in these
there's
kids.
really only a handful of these moments in the show, but when they hit, and
Yeah.
that counts for something.
It's also at times a little bit darker than I think we were expecting.
Yeah, it's definitely got an edge, something that kids' movies and things maybe have lost over the years.
Yeah, shied away from, yeah.
Yeah,
But Count Olaf, of course, sometimes is a little bit darker. He's a little bit more sinister than maybe you would expect going in, and I think that actually is what makes him a far more interesting villain and far more entertaining. That he can threaten to stab someone, even though it's supposed to be a kids' entertainment.
but it does
Sure.
feel like there is an actual sense of danger.
Yeah. You believe that he will actually do it. You kind of know that he won't. You know he won't get to do it, but you believe he wants to.
Yeah,
And I think that's a big deal. So what is the show about? Of course, it's based on a series of books by Lemony Snicket, who is a pseudonym for
Daniel
real writer's
Handler.
name? Daniel Handler. Thank you very much. And the whole premise of the book is that these rich kids, their parents die in an explosion, and they go to live with their nearest, closest living relative, which is Count Olaf. There's some caveats to that, but I'll let you discover those in the show yourself. And he's really just after their fortune. He's awful to them, and it's not spoiling. It's kind of, this is the story of the first 2 episodes. Each 2 episodes they're all two-parters, and each two-parter is based on one book in the series. So there's 4 books covered in this first season, and the idea is that after the first book, which is them living with Olaf, they go to different relatives, but Olaf always shows up and tries to interfere, usually in costume, playing a different character, but you can tell it's him, and that's where the real hijinks come out.
yeah.
But so we follow these three kids: Violet, Klaus, and Sunny. Sunny's just a baby. Violet's a teenage girl who is very inventive, likes making things, very good with her hands. Klaus is an avid reader and very intelligent when it comes to wordplay and thinking things through and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's your main characters, and Olaf, of course, is this greedy, awful actor. He does consider himself an actor, and that plays into, of course, his costuming and playing these different roles to try and get close to the children. But he's also awful and greedy and wants their money.
Yeah.
And shallow.
That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. So, and it follows them through their adventures, and that's the plot of the show.
I think the other main feature that's worth mentioning is it's narrated, which by Lemony Snicket, and he is not just a voiceover narration. He stands and he is there, and he is a part of the show. Yeah,
played by Patrick Warburton.
Yeah,
he steps onto the camera. Yeah,
it's a very important part of the show actually, because it's almost a cop out with how he sets up a lot of the jokes by referring to something and then the characters do. But it really works because it's always it still lands. It's still funny, even though it is just a case of we've been told that this should be funny, so it is.
It's not so much that we've been told it's funny, it's just that the setup for the joke comes from a different place.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from the characters themselves, it comes from his narration. But because of that, it's funny when it pops up.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not something that he sets up in a set-up-y way. Like, sometimes he'll mention something, and then it'll pop up later in the episode. Whereas, there's some that it does pop up right away. Like, he'll say, oh, something is this, and then it immediately happens.
Yeah.
Those ones aren't as funny.
No, I agree.
But the ones where he'll just say something offhand, and then it'll be referenced later on, that's when it really works. And he's a big part of the show. It really adds a lot to the texture of the show that it makes it feel different from everything else as well. It gives it its own voice.
It's got a very stylized look in general, but I think it's his addition that really sets the show apart and gives it its own thing, because it is such a different format for its storytelling.
Yeah, it is very stylized. It looks very European, actually.
Yeah, like Gothic European.
Yeah, Gothic European. Certainly a lot of influence from various films and styles. And it looks like a movie as well. I think that's something to really point out. Even though there's some, obvious green screen here or there, it kind of fits the style of the show. It's got a very over-the-top Gothic, but
it's this blending of styles as well. Like, you'll get two very distinct things right next to each other. Yeah,
it's mildly cartoony in that sense as well. The way it kind of has these green screen moments, but it works. Yeah. As far as the structure of the show, obviously we said it's each 2 episodes is a 2-parter. Each 2-parter is based on a book. The criticisms that can maybe bring with it works fairly well. It's essentially 4 movies if you want to look at it that way. The criticisms that would bring though is that some of the part 1s suffer a little bit, especially the middle episodes.
Yeah, they're a little bit formulaic.
A little bit formulaic because they always start with them arriving at a new relative, and then you're waiting for who's Olaf going to show up as in this episode. So there is a little bit more formulaic. The part 2s tend to be fare a little bit better. And the other problem that this maybe brings is that it doesn't really feel like it has an ending in terms of a season.
It doesn't, because it's very clear that it wants to just kind of go on to book 5, but this is where they've been told to stop.
Yeah, it feels like, this is where we stop because season 2 will start with book 5, but it doesn't really feel like there's been a plot necessarily. For the most part, there is one thread that plays throughout that sort of has a big climactic end in the last 2-parter, but for the most part, it doesn't really feel like a big conclusion, where when you watch a normal season of TV from any other show, it does feel like this was the season-long arc, this is what wrapped up at the end. Here, it just feels like, no, this is where we're stopping.
Yeah, it's like I say, there is like a B plot that is wrapped up. That is kind of like the season plot in that sense, but it is such a small thing throughout that it doesn't really feel like the end of a season. Yeah.
But regardless of that, though, it's actually pretty strong, pretty good. It's entertaining. It's very easy to watch. It's never, unlike some other Netflix shows, it's got no pacing issues. I don't think. I think it's very, very brisk. Feels like it's always moving.
Every episode, it's however long it is, it always feels shorter.
Yeah, even the longest one, which was like over an hour, never even felt that length.
No, I got to the end of that episode, I was like, oh, we're done.
Yeah. So, Olaf has a group of henchmen his acting troupe that act as his evil henchmen, and a lot of them are pretty funny as well. So there's a lot of funny characters. There's a banker character, Mr. Poe, who is the one who kind of takes the kids to each new like relative. He's sort of dealing with their case.
Yeah.
He's very funny. There's a really wide variety of supporting cast who all have their own thing. They all have their own unique element that makes them funny. Our favourite henchman in the show was the guy with the hooks for hands, Hookman.
Yes.
Hook-handed
man. Yeah.
Hook-handed man. I think we called him Hookman for short, but yeah, he was our favourite for various reasons. But they're all really good. The baby Sunny is really funny. They subtitle her dialogue, so she makes baby noises, but we get subtitles saying what she says, and that adds a lot of
yeah.
humour.
It's often hilarious because there's only a handful of characters throughout the show that can understand her.
Yeah, it's like one of these. I'm trying to think of an example. It's kind of like Scooby-Doo, where Shaggy always understands what Scooby's saying.
Yeah.
Even though he shouldn't. Like, there's no reason why he should, but he does.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like that. And it's usually funny, because Sunny, despite being a baby, is usually the smartest person in the room, and that adds to the layer of humour. So, no. So it's fun, energetic, very quickly paced. The minor criticisms would be that some of the part ones are a little bit formulaic. It does end just kind of, because this is where the ending is, and we need to stop for next season.
I'd surprised that it hits hard with a couple of its plot points, where we were not expecting it to. It's like, oh, that was really good and like really strong. And obviously, as we say, a lot of this, the enjoyment we're getting out of it is the humor, but there are plot details that really land. And also, it has a great score from James Newton Howard, which is persistent throughout. It never falters.
The music is very good. The music is... James Newton Howard, of course, scored Unbreakable. He co-scored the Dark Knight films. He scored...
Just the first two.
Just the first... That doesn't really matter, Connor.
Just point that out.
It doesn't matter. Jesus Christ. Oh, your obsession with being accurate.
Well, I mean, just if you weren't wrong, I wouldn't have to make the correction. But yeah, his score lends a lot, especially to these emotional moments that we're talking about. They're really played up by his music.
Yeah, music's very good. There was quite a few themes, like a few parts where I was finding myself humming them to myself after a few episodes. So, no, so yeah, surprisingly touching in places, and I'm deeply impressed. I'm looking forward to a second season. They've not renewed it yet, but hopefully they will. I don't see why they wouldn't.
I'm confident. Netflix tend to be pretty generous with their renewals. This is a pre-existing property which has a lot of people excited for this beforehand.
Yeah, a lot of people are into it. I've seen a lot of buzz over Twitter and things like that. People are really excited about it. So, no, especially right now, I feel like the generation who grew up with the books are all around our age.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. So, I think they're all pretty into it. I never read the books myself, so I guess that's maybe something I should say, that for someone who's never read the books, this was enjoyable. There was nothing that felt held back. But in that sense.
So if you've not read the books and you're hearing everyone talk about it because they've read it, and you feel like you'll be missing something, don't worry, you definitely won't.
You won't. Arguably, there's even a nice little twist in the show that I think works better if you haven't read the books.
I agree with that.
So, there you go. That's Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, Season 1 on Netflix. We want to give you a spoiler-free overall thing for people who haven't watched any of it yet and just want to know, is it worth watching? So we kept this fairly quick, and so we recommend it, basically. If that's... Obviously, it's not for everyone. It's very stylized. It may not be your thing. It's very different from most of the other things we watch, to be fair. But give it a chance.
It's also, I think, by the time you get to the end of the first two-parter, you'll know one way or the other whether or not you're going to enjoy this. If you didn't like that, you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of the show.
Absolutely. So that's the Season 1 spoiler-free review. Thank you very much for watching. You can let us know what you thought of the season as a whole if you want in the comments, although I would recommend maybe heading over to the other reviews, which are full of spoilers, and you can speak full spoilers in the comments to your heart's content. Go to the Episode 8 review specifically, maybe, for the full season talk. But thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. That helps us out a lot if you do that. But hopefully we'll see you sometime for Season 2. We'll see you next time.